Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast, number 88. This time I'm doing an interview that is different from the past. I had listened to a colleague being interviewed about her immigration practice by Steve Schwartz. He helps potential law students prepare for the LSAT, and I liked and commented on that interview, so he followed up when we talked, and we thought it would be a neat idea to interview each other for each other's podcast. So we did two interviews, both of them posted here. I put the recording of him interviewing me, which goes through my background and how I got involved in this area of law and what I do first. I've talked about this stuff in smaller pieces during regular episodes throughout the years, but I thought it'd be a good idea to have some background on me all in one place. After that, it'll be his interview, which will be interesting for all the attorneys listening because it discusses a phase that almost all of us have gone through before going to law school, which is preparing and giving the LSAT. And we also talk about how things have changed and been updated for the exam and the people taking it. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com.
Hey, John, welcome to LSAT Unplugged.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So I was really excited to be speaking with you today because you're living it, you're living the dream, you are living life as a lawyer. And given that, I'm hoping that you'll be able to share a bit more of what it's the real world experience is like behind the scenes. What is it actually like being a lawyer? You have your own practice, right? What exactly do you do?
That's correct. I have a solo practice, a full solo, where I handle everything myself. I'm an immigration attorney, but that's a pretty wide field. The thing about immigration is it touches upon so many different types of law, whether it's family or criminal stuff or going to court or federal appeals. I handle what's called benefits-based, which is really dealing with the government through mailing them stuff for people that most of the time are legally going to get an immigration benefit, a work permit or green card through marriage or citizenship, that kind of stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. And I remember before we started our conversation, you mentioned that you had kind of built the firm around your life. And given that you're a solo practitioner, of course, you're in the optimal position to do that. How do you find that balance and how have you crafted things to have a good work-life balance?
You know, it's been a dream. I'm living the dream, really. And I hate to say it because I'm afraid I'm going to wake up now that I'm putting it out there. But, when I went to law school, we would go to, these night things where we talk with firms and lawyers and how their lives are. And many times I would find that they're not really satisfied in their lives, or at least I could tell that was it. On a Wednesday night, there would be a drinking, we go to their firm, everyone would be drunk or drinking a lot. And I'm like, well, it's Wednesday at 9 o'clock at night. Why are they that drunk? Or why aren't they with their family? And, everyone has different goals in life, how they want to live it. Some people want to be high-powered lawyers that make a lot of money. I thought, I want to live a more simpler life with my family, have time to do things I want to do. I don't want to work 12 to 18 hours on a firm work on a case-by-case basis necessarily. I like to work from home. I like to, not argue with people. I don't want to have a deadline. So I don't go to immigration court because immigration court requires me to be at a certain place at a certain time and to argue with the government attorney. I just mail stuff to the government on my own schedule and in my client's schedule. Being a solo firm, I can pick and choose my clients and the type of cases I want to do. But I control the finances of my business, so I'm flexible and I know how much I need to make things move. But at the same time, not force myself to take on cases or deal with people I don't want to deal with just because of the overhead. And that's why being a full solo has been so helpful. And, I like to travel and work from wherever I want. I work from home most of the time, but if I go to Las Vegas, DC, Washington State, New York, I just need my laptop and I do everything I do at home. And so it's really flexible the way I've done it.
That is really cool. So the biggest question I have is how exactly did you get there? Because anyone can, especially working from home, you can carve out a corner in your house or apartment for a desk, but where do the clients come from?
Sure. I mean, that's the number one thing being a lawyer is getting clients. There's a lot of good lawyers, but doesn't necessarily mean they can get clients. And unless someone wants to hire you and pay you, all that knowledge is worthless in reality. And so when I worked for a solo practitioner for about 2 years before I started my own firm, and I learned the law and how it works and how to manage the office itself. But then when I opened up my own firm, I thought I'd get a lot of referrals from family, friends and stuff. I have a foreign background. My parents are from Iran. and I know a lot of foreign people, and they promised me, the world. I'm going to send you so many clients, this and that. Nothing came. So I spent a couple of months just studying online marketing and how to have an online presence. And sure enough, after a couple of months of putting myself out there, I was way ahead of the game, and it just expands and grows. And most of my day is just turning down people that want to hire me. So about 99% of people who call me, I don't take on the cases, and about 30-40% of them are cases I could take on, and they're good money, if you will, but they just don't meet my ideal client type. So I just don't accept the case, or I tell them, I turn them down, or various ways, just so I get the perfect client that fits me. And it's because I've been able to have an online brand and presence where I put myself out there, and people contact me through that.
Wow, that's an incredible position to be in. And once again, I'm sure that many law students and future law students are envious of this. What kind of networking worked well and what kind did not work well? You mentioned the internet, but obviously there's a million options. What's effective, what's not?
The traditional way people do as lawyers are referrals from friends and people they meet in meetings and stuff, but I found that not to be too helpful. If you are going to network, don't go to free networking events. Maybe when you're starting out, just to get the hang of talking with people and not being shy. But I used to go to local bar meetings where everyone would come. And what I found was it was just people that were just coming to hustle and try to get a quick client or talk. They wouldn't go anywhere. The quality of the people weren't that high. If you're going to go and network people that pay to get in a group. For example, if there's a door fee, that weeds out a lot of people that don't have money, just to be frank. And the people who have successful business will come. And so the people you'll talk with have the money to pay, $20, $50, $100 or more to come in that group. So they're actually doing business and not just struggling to come in. So don't hesitate to pay a fee to go to a conference, a seminar, a meeting with other lawyers. That's a way of weeding out people. Even my own firm, I have a consultation fee, and the primary reason for the consultation fee is to work with people who are willing and are excited to work with me or are interested, not just wasting my time. And so I would do meetings and go networking like that. And I still do because I like talking with people and learning new things from them. But I found when people refer me clients, the people that are being referred, the potential clients, usually have like an expectation that I'm going to do all the work for free, or I'm going to spend hours and hours and hours with them at no cost. And I'm going to give them a discount because a friend sent them. What I found online is when people find me through the internet, they then do a search and they see my background, my awards. That I've been I am a professor of immigration law at several universities, and all the programs that I do, my podcast. And when they contact me with a certain level of respect and appreciation and willingness to work with me, because they know how much dedication I have to the field. I have several videos and programs I do where I teach and law, and I work with other lawyers. And they know I'm not a fly-by-night kind of guy. I really need to use this time wisely because I only have a few hours in a day. And so the people that come to me are much more appreciative, as opposed to a referral, which is just like my phone number a friend gave, and they call me blind. They don't have that level of frankly, respect contacting me. But that's, everyone else does it differently. Everyone does the networking thing. It just doesn't work for me. And I'm rare, I think. It's probably in the future, it's going to be more and more in the model I'm doing it. But right now, most people don't do it like me.
So there's a lot of valuable insights there. I agree 100% that if someone just has your name and phone number and they don't Google you, they don't see all the impressive credentials you have in your online platforms and your podcast and website. And so there's a different expectation there, I think, because then it's more of a commodity. They're just saying any name and phone number without the credentials would be equal to them. They don't know.
Yeah, branding is so important, and setting up the first expectation right. It's just, and that's something I don't teach in law school, but just as much as contracts or business associations or crim pro or crim procedure, all that stuff is important. Knowing how to brand yourself is so important, because if you start working as an associate, and some people like being employees, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. I never could handle being an employee for a long time. I wanted to control my own destiny. If you can't market your business and close deals and get clients, you're never going to control your life. So it's really important to start reading that stuff in law school, so you have a running start. Even if you want to get hired as an attorney, if you go into an interview with someone who's somewhat knowledgeable and like an older attorney that is somewhat understanding of the importance of the internet, and you come with, I know how to build your brand online. I know how to use social media to do that. We can do podcasts and videos and this kind of stuff we're doing right here. If they're able to include that as their package, in addition to, graduating at a good grade or having an internship or externship somewhere that was successful, that I think that adds a lot of value to, the person has the ears to hear, the employer that has an understanding. And that could be a really cool thing that's an add-on to their value.
That's a really valuable insight. So you're saying that employers might value a prospective first-year associate, not so much for their legal skills or know-how, because they may not have very much right upon
Yeah.
graduating, but the internet and social media, especially, I think especially for smaller firms, they could really see the value of that.
Yeah, you said it's smaller firms, and because if I bring on someone that's a first year 2L, 3L, even a graduate, it costs me time and money to train them what to do, and they could just bail out on me and stuff. So uh, there's this idea of like, oh, I'll tell this lawyer I'll work for free or I'll work really cheap. It's not cheap. It's still going to take my time, and there could be mistakes, and I got to oversee you and have to have extra space in the room. So there's all that. Having additional things, sometimes for some firms, it's having additional language skills, but I think if the firm has understanding and understands what the internet is, and most don't, frankly, lawyers are the last to upgrade stuff when it comes to technology. But if they have somewhat of understanding and you come in with the idea of the social media or marketing aspect that's different, it could really be a difference.
Wow, that's really, really valuable insight. Now, I gathered that you went straight from law school to having your own practice, right?
Well, no, I worked for another attorney for 2 years. He was a solo practitioner, older gentleman. But when I came on board, I just came in as a translator at first, actually, for like a day. And then I'm like, I could just do this legal work. And he's like, okay. And he pretty much gave me the reins of the firm, and I ran it. He would come and check on things, sign stuff. But so I ran his firm essentially for almost 2 years until we got so busy, and I needed him to come to help out. And after 2 years of just being on my own, essentially, and having someone be there with me all the time and micromanaging, I was like, oh, I can't handle this. He was a great guy. I'm more of a loner when it comes to work and stuff, or even, I don't play soccer or basketball. I like tennis and skiing. I'm a solo kind of guy. So I was like, I can't do this. I got to do my own firm. And I've been doing that sixth year now, and it grows really well. And again, it goes to my lifestyle and the things I want to do, which is practice law, but at the same time, I like doing educational stuff. I'm creating a marketplace for legal education and training and all that kind of stuff. And I need the extra time to do those things that are long-term payouts. It might take years for those to actually go somewhere, but I couldn't do that if I was working for someone, or if I had to take really complex, time-consuming cases that would suck up all my time.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you've got this other project going on with legal education. Who's the target for that? Would that be law students or current
That's
lawyers?
part of it. It's called the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox. The website's the immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. And it's for people, graduating law school, maybe they can't find a job and they want to start their own firm. Immigration is super complex. At first, when you go into it, it seems very easy, like it's a bunch of forms. But when you dive into it and you see the nuances, it gets really hard. So I want to have a place where they can go and study it there. There's people that are tired of being criminal attorneys or, litigators and all that kind of stuff. They want to go to something that's potentially more just more peaceful because you're handling that, or they might want to do more humanitarian stuff and help people that are having difficulties with asylum or the court system, with immigration court system. So they can learn that stuff as well as people in the immigration field, because immigration is so big. There's people that only handle like a third of the kind of cases they are. Like I handle certain kind of cases, like an L1 intercompany transfer. It's when a foreign company wants to transfer employees to the U.S. And have them work here and eventually potentially get a green card. It's a very complex, difficult case, and many immigration lawyers don't know how to do them. They don't have any experience with the clients or having done those cases, so they're kind of afraid to do them. They don't have anywhere to start from. Well, I can give samples of my cases and do videos breaking down what the rules and regulations are on this, and have training materials that are updated, and so that they can access those, learn those, and get involved in this field. And then develop that community. So it's current immigration attorneys, people switching, and law students and recent grads.
Well, that's really interesting. I actually work with a lot of pre-law students who want to go into immigration law. A lot of them often immigrants themselves.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you might be able to share, given that this is like your focus, are there certain common misconceptions or myths you see about immigration law that don't really match the reality?
Yeah, I mean, the idea that it's forms for, first and foremost, people think immigration is all deportation, people getting kicked out of the country, or humanitarian stuff like asylum. But a large chunk of it is companies investing, starting businesses here, people getting married, coming legally. So there's that aspect. Then they think it's just forms, like the basic forms we fill out. But the complexity of law is much more than that. So you have to understand the law and prepare the cases for it. And then the fact that they think there's no money in it. Now, immigration law is, even when they do the surveys, it's one of the lowest paid areas of law. But that, I think, has to do more with, one is people doing humanitarian cases, which is a large part of it, and not getting paid that much because they're doing it because of a sense of duty and obligation and trying to help people. And another is immigration attorneys, and most attorneys in general, aren't good at business. So they just don't run their offices well. They'll be getting a lot of cases and a lot of money coming in. But for example, they might have an office lease that's $3,500 a month, and that just eats up a big chunk when they're like, they don't need that space. Or they have phone services that are $2,000 a month when they could get a $100 one if they just do a little more research. So not good at running the office, not good at collecting the money, and frankly saying no when a client isn't good for them, or client wants a discount on a case that really should charge $5,000 because it's just so much work, but they end up charging like $1,500 because they're afraid they might lose the client. They're desperate. So just all these different ways of not managing themselves properly causes them to be lower paid, but you can make a good lifestyle and a good living being an immigration attorney. And like for me, I have the free time to constantly study and become a better immigration attorney. With immigration law, you can study this stuff every day for 20 years and still not know a big chunk of it. It's that complex and hard. But you got to start somewhere. And for the most part, if you find a niche and focus on that, you'll get better and better at that area. For example, I could do an L1 intercompany transfer pretty well, but I can't go to immigration court and handle myself too well because I know all the rules and regulations and what I'm supposed to do. But unless you're doing it on a day-to-day basis, I wouldn't recommend jumping into it or for example, hiring me for it because I think you should go someone that does it on a day-to-day basis, knows the clerks, knows the judges, knows the security guards, so you get information if they need to like that, or smile and be like, hey, judge, good to see you, have relationships. It's even above just the law itself. So I focus on my niche and know that well, and I'm growing at that. And I do study other areas to be well-rounded, but that's just the nature of immigration.
No, of course, that's really interesting. So when something does go in the direction of the courtroom, is that where referrals then come in?
Yeah, I mean, because I get so many contacts from the internet and I do so few types of cases, like I do the people investing, starting businesses, people getting married, and people with extraordinary abilities. But even with those areas, I turn down a lot of clients. So about, again, 90% or plus of cases I turn down. Then I refer to other friends of mine who do those areas and are dedicated, and I just refer those out to them. And hopefully, they get them. I don't follow up. There's this tradition of lawyers, it depends on your jurisdiction of getting a percentage fee of someone you refer a case to and stuff. I just don't do that because it's just a hassle keeping track of it. And those people do so much work, they deserve to get all the money with regards to immigration and stuff. So it's not something I traditionally do, sharing fees and stuff. I just say, I don't expect something from me, but I won't expect anything from you too. And again, I don't usually get referrals sent to me anyways, or I turn them down. So it doesn't really make a difference for me. But I just send it out to friends.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. When you were in law school, did you know that you were going to want to do immigration law, or were you considering something else?
No, I didn't want to practice law. I mean, the reason I went to law school is just because I love the Constitution and reading what the founders did in the Federalist Papers and the foresight they had in the philosophy of liberty. And that was amazing to me. So I wanted to be like Jefferson. And so I said, Jefferson's a lawyer, I'll study law. So I went to law school. And pretty soon after that, I was pretty disgusted with law. I realized it's a large part of it is how much money you have. Money leads to success. The law itself doesn't make sense. A lot of times you get outcomes that don't really match what society or justice requires. And there's so many manipulations, so much subjectivity. Judges have issues, prosecutors have issues. It just grossed me out. So I didn't want to practice pretty quickly. I just wanted to get the education and see where I could take it from there. I got involved in business when I graduated. I started doing investments and stuff like that. Partially based, or a large part based on reading constitutional cases. For example, I graduated in 2008, 2009 when the economy was crashing. And there's a series of cases called the Gold Clause cases, which is lawsuits that happened during the Great Depression over, repayment of debt based on the price of gold and this kind of stuff. And when I read those cases, I saw that when the economy crashes, the government inflates the currency to make up for the losses that they have to pay back. And I'm like, well, we're going through something similar to that right now. So I took the money I had to pay back, tuition and my family had given me. Instead of, paying back the tuition, I just bought some certain stocks, some certain currencies, gold and silver. And in 2009, they hit a bottom. I bought those and they went up, and I made just as much as I would if I was practicing. And that's because, capital gains gets taxed at a lower rate than income tax does. So my friends were, practicing law, and they get taxed at a much higher rate than an investor does. And so that was something interesting I found out, but it was kind of a fluke. It's not something that consistently pull off. It was one of those once in a lifetime kind of situations. And so after a year or two of doing that and having great success, I realized it's not something I can continue. And that's when I went to a family friend's office to do a translation, and I became an immigration attorney. So it's like that.
Wow, it's really funny how we just kind of fall into things sometimes.
Yeah, and that's how it's going to be. Very rarely, unless you're a law student that has, your parents are in a certain type of law and you're following their footsteps, or you have some sort of hookup somewhere. You rarely choose where you're going to get into. I was thinking about maybe real estate or criminal law or business, this and that, but it's all about who hires you and where you start getting skills at. Immigration is kind of nuanced because people that like immigration go into it, and there's so many clients in need and so many clinics that help teach you to do that there is space to learn it and get involved in on your own. But in general, it's very hard to choose the practice area you're going to get into.
It kind of just depends on the opportunities that open themselves up to
Yeah,
you.
yes, it's life. You fall into it. And later on, if you get more skills and connections, maybe you could kind of go sideways and find a niche that you like. So a lot of times you won't even like what you think you like. So most people listening to this, myself included, always think like, oh, entertainment law is so interesting and stuff. But I went to Hollywood and worked for about 6 months as an internship for that stuff. And you're really just looking at contracts, and you're dealing with people that are, a lot of times, the entertainment industry, very annoying and arrogant and difficult to deal with, and have really high expectations for no reason. So it took away from that sexiness that it had. And a lot of people, when I go talk at schools, I remember I was at UCLA talking a couple months ago, and there it was the International Institute, and they all wanted to get involved in international law. They knew Amal Clooney, George Clooney's wife, is international law. They're very excited about that. I said, well, there's no real international law as it is, because each jurisdiction has their own sovereignty and stuff. Primarily, national law is just contract law of one company suing another, trying because of some deal going bad. Immigration is considered international law, and California bar considers it as part of that section, which is people, the movement of people. So that part is international. But even I had this aspect of being an international lawyer, traveling, going to different locations. It's not as fun when you do travel. If you do, it's probably going to, the firms or clients that can afford that are very big companies. So essentially, you're going to be working for some big company that you may not even like. These big corporations that do horrible things sometimes, banks, and I don't want to name them, I don't want to get sued, but the typical bad guy, big corporations, they're the people that could afford to hire international lawyers to sue other people on their behalf. And so it's not necessarily as fun and interesting a job as you thought it would. Essentially, you're looking at contracts and stuff. You're in a room. And when you travel, you're not going to go sightseeing. You're getting paid for your time there. When you're done, they're kicking you out to go back home because they don't want to pay more. So the reality of this stuff, once it hit me, it really destroyed a lot of those dreams and stuff like that. But immigration, the way I do it, is really cool because I could travel anywhere in the world, and I do to meet with people and talk about their lives and help them immigrate to the United States. So I've really carved out an excellent niche, which is rare for a lot of people to do. It's easy. Anyone could do it, but I've found like most people can't do it. There's some sort of mental block to do it the way I do it.
Well, that's very cool. I really appreciate you kind of speaking the fact to overcome the myths that people have about all this stuff. I think you've cleared up a lot of misconceptions about the different areas of law that people could practice. So
Okay.
I appreciate you doing this, John. You want to share a little bit about just the best way for folks to reach you, the podcast, the toolbox, and all that?
Yeah, I mean, my email is info@jqqlaw.com. I answer my emails myself. My website is JQK Law for my firm, but the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox is the place where I put my podcasts and updated information on immigration laws. And I'm just constantly trying to do more videos and information systems to fill that in. And it's a work in progress. But yeah, and I also have social media. Usually if you type in JQK Law on Google and in the social media handle or name, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all this stuff, my stuff should pop up and you get access to it there.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank
And I
you so
definitely
much.
encourage everyone watching and listening to check out JQK Law, the podcast, the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox. Again, you're offering a great resource to everyone, and I appreciate your putting it out there.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. The second interview is about to begin. As a reminder, you can find more information about the practice of immigration law at the immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Welcome to this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. It's a little bit different. Usually, I interview immigration lawyers and people in the field, but I got the chance to speak with a great person, Steve Schwartz. He's an expert and professional at preparing for the LSAT. And so I had seen him interview one of my colleagues, Tamina Watson. I'd interviewed her myself. And he did such a good job that we connected. And I thought, it's an interesting thing to talk about his background and where things are going, because most of my audience is immigration attorneys. And they've been through this process, but a lot of things have changed. So I just want to jump in there to see what are people going through, going from the undergraduate process to law school and their mindset there and even in law school. But before you start that, Steve, why don't you tell us more about your background and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. It's a pleasure to be with you today. So I've been coaching the LSAT for over 10 years now. I started back when I was considering law school myself. So I took the LSAT then for that reason, because of course, most people don't really do this for fun. And I gone to Ivy League undergrad. Then I took the LSAT practice and got a 152, which is around the median score, around the average. It's not really going to get you into a top 14 law school. So I was pretty discouraged.
Yeah.
But I kind of ended up using that discouragement, that frustration as fuel. And I ended up doing every single LSAT released up to that point and spent over a year hammering away at this exam until I finally got a 175 on test day.
Nice.
And once I did, I was like, you know what? I really like this exam after all, because it's like kind of funny, when you don't like something when you're bad at it, but once you do become good at it, then it kind of becomes fun. So I started helping out friends with their LSAT prep, and I started tutoring it. And I had tutored other things in the past as well, like the SAT and academic high school subjects. And so I found that I really loved teaching the LSAT, and I built a website around it called the LSAT blog, where I started sharing free information, and it kind of just snowballed from there. And then more recently, I've created the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast, where I'm having discussions like what we're doing right now, as well as just kind of doing Q&A sessions and teaching lessons on there. And I really love it. It's a lot of fun.
What year did you take the LSAT?
I took it back in 2005.
2005. So I think we were in the same boat, actually, same year. Okay.
Oh, really? No kidding.
Yeah. Cause I started law school in 2006. I probably took the year beforehand. Awesome. And what part of the country are you in?
I'm in New York.
Okay. So, yeah, I actually kind of enjoyed doing the LSAT. It was kind of fun for me. Just the LSAT itself, studying for it was kind of fun. I'm probably a sick person or something, but the games was interesting. Learning how to do the games was really key and stuff. One thing I messed up on is the games portion was the third part, and for some reason I flipped the pages too much. And so I started for my question 1 was actually question number 6. And I did that, and that ended. I'm like, I'm missing some questions, answers. Then I realized it was wrong, so I had to erase. You know how erasers on a Scantron are. So I'm guessing I got wiped out. I got to be frank, I got a 161, which was top 82% or 83% that year, something like that. So it got me, a couple scholarships and some between 50. Actually, I got Hastings or some of these schools at the time were in the top 30 or 40 or something like that. But I didn't feel like giving the test again. I was like, you know what? I didn't want to leave LA. So I went to Loyola. It was a good school. It was local. So I just went there.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah. Miss Bubbling's crazy, but it sounds like you did all right in the end anyway.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to kill myself over it. I mean, maybe I should have. I remember when I was studying for the LSAT, I studied for at 2 months to prep for that test masters or whatever it was I was using. I studied for a month and I was doing decent. And then I just stopped studying after that. And my work ethic before law school was horrible. The law school really taught me how to work hard. I didn't have that. Studying for the bar taught me how to work hard. Before that, I was just kind of a lazy student. I could get away with things just from my basic IQ level. I could get away with above average, but I couldn't reach the goals I wanted to because I wasn't ready to put the effort into it. But that was something that law school changed. It beat it into me. Why did you not decide to go into law school? What switched to not want to pursue that path?
Like, I guess a couple of things. I started writing a law school personal statement, and it ended up being all about why I didn't want to go to law school, kind of in a kind of a circumspect way, I guess. I ended up writing all about how I was kind of jaded with international law and the United Nations. And so for that reason, I want to do something else like criminal law maybe, but it was like 80% why I don't like this one thing, and then 20% this other thing. And it kind of seemed, I showed to my brother and he was like, it sounds like you don't really want to go to law school. And so I thought about it and I was like, maybe not. And at the same time, I loved teaching the LSAT, and I kind of really found my calling, really found my niche in the LSAT prep. It's a much more niche subject than like the SAT or high school academics. And so I quickly found people who wanted my services and found what I had to say valuable. And back in 2005, 2008, the internet was a very different place. There was very little out there about such a niche topic as the LSAT. And so I published a blog post about it. People would find it in Google. They'd find me online pretty quickly. And so I started building momentum really fast. And so once I saw this thing had legs, I was like, you know what, let me just keep doing this for a while and see how it goes.
So yeah, I was going to say it's kind of a scary thing to jump ship on the safe law degree, but is the fact that you got clients quickly is what helped make it easy to do the transition?
Yeah, I would say that definitely helped. And like I said, I had tutored other stuff before. Throughout college, I was posting flyers all over New York City about like test prep for the SAT.
Mm-hmm.
I used to post on Craigslist for it as well. And so I kind of knew how to market a bit. But then once I built my own site, my own platform, then I kind of just really snowballed from there. Like I said, posting on message boards and forums and Facebook and all that. Marketing changes over time, but there are certain essential themes I think that remain constant.
How do you do do you train one-on-one or do you have a team or how does that work?
So I don't have a team. It's all me. I'm the only instructor, the only teacher, typically teaching one-on-one, at
Hmm.
least historically, but over time, my site has grown to be more than just the one-on-one. I now have test prep books that students can get,
Oh, yeah.
study guides, cheat sheets, explanations. I also have video courses for each section of the LSAT, as well as a video course focused on getting ready for test day. I also do a lot with webinars and things like that. I'm also actually starting to do like in-person meetups with small groups. And so there's always new things to experiment with. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I'll talk offline about some technical stuff about where you upload your videos and stuff. Remember,
Yeah, sure.
we're kind of doing the same thing with where's my toolbox and your prep, but it's just different parts of it. So it's good to discuss that stuff. So you've been doing this for a lot of years now. Is this the only thing you do? I mean, has it gone just LSAT, or do you still do SATs and stuff?
No, I stopped doing the SAT stuff pretty quickly. Like right after I went full time with the LSAT after college, I kind of dropped all the other subjects very fast because the LSAT was much more interesting than the
Hmm.
other stuff. I think that the LSAT has a level of complexity and nuance and detail and depth
Yeah.
that you really don't find in any of the other exams. Even the GMAT, the GRE, the MCAT, the LSAT's a whole nother beast. You can't memorize it. You can't cram for it. You haven't learned anything like it in school up to that point. And so I think that that kind of caught my interest. And again, it's something that very few people can do. And so once you can do it,
Hmm.
you're automatically in demand for it.
So, I took a test course, and it definitely does help, especially if I got a one-on-one person. I would have been helping this group of people and getting distractions and stuff. Your service probably would have been better. But do you find some people that are not teachable, or or you could always help people at least gain some points no matter what?
I think it's a mix. You can always help people to some extent, but I will admit that there are honestly some people who may just not have what it takes. And it could be a combination of not having the prior training or rigorous way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
But also, there are so many students who don't have the time. People, especially after college, once they're working, once they have families, it's really hard to put in the time, but you've got to put in the time. And
Yeah.
people underestimate just how difficult this is. People typically have a 2 month timeline or a 3 month timeline. And also, things were way less competitive way back when, right? Like even
Hmm.
back in 2005, back when you were studying and I was studying, it wasn't the same as it is now. Now there's all these boutique online resources. The exam's gotten more difficult over time. And so you've got to be willing to invest the time since your competition is as well. Your fellow
Yeah.
applicants are as well. You got to put in at least, I'd say 15, 20 hours a week on average.
Yeah, that's what you got to do to succeed. I didn't realize that until I became a lawyer, that those kind of hours you, if you really want to push things. Like we've talked about this, but I don't work 15 or 16 hours on cases per se, but I do that development of my firm. I'm not studying, and eventually adds up to a lot. Now, what have been the changes since 2005 till now in the LSAT?
Well, I think the exam format itself hasn't changed too much over time. You still got the logic games. You've still got the logical reasoning and reading comprehension. There have been a couple small changes. One of them is that the logic games went from being all crammed onto one page to having a 2-page layout. So you got a bit more space.
Hmm.
But now the biggest change is this year, actually. It's kind of like a timing that we're having this discussion. But the LSAT's finally going digital. All the other big exams are digital. The GMAT is, the GRE is, the MCAT is, I think. And now the LSAT finally, as you mentioned in our previous discussion, legal bureaucracy is slow to adopt technology, right?
Yeah.
And so LSAC has been as well. They've been kind of studying and puttering around this idea of computerizing it for years. But finally, this year, starting in July, they're going to administer it on a tablet.
Mm.
So that's the big change coming this year. They're going to, and in July, they're going to give half of test takers the digital format on the tablet. They'll give the other half paper and pencil just to kind of measure how each group does. But then the plan is that, assuming nothing surprising happens, starting in September, everyone's going to be taking it on a tablet going forward.
So, do they give you a tablet when you go there?
Yeah, so they're going to have all the tablets preloaded. They come in there. They're going to be a Windows tablet, I believe, and so no, I'm sorry, a Microsoft Surface Go. They were
Hmm.
talking about Windows, but it's going to be a Microsoft Surface Go tablet. So not an iPad, not a Samsung. And so I'm starting to recommend that test takers get themselves a tablet if they want to study like it's going to be game
Hmm.
day. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be that one in particular. You could use an iPad or something. You could even study on your phone a little bit if the screen's big enough. But you got to practice like it's going to be on the test day. So that's what I recommend.
Interesting. So, did they increase the price for this at all to buy these things, or how's the pricing on LSATs going?
So the pricing has kind of increased significantly each year, much more than inflation.
Mm.
It's $190 to register for the LSAT right now.
Hmm.
And most people take it at least 2 or 3 times now because law schools no longer average multiple LSAT scores. So
Mm.
if you get a 150, then a 170, they're going to take it as if you got a 170 only. So
Mhm.
big incentives to retake it, especially if you think you can do better next time.
Interesting. Okay, so you talked about the GMAT or GRE, those other tests coming in. How widespread is that? And let's just jump into that topic.
Yeah, so the big interesting thing now as well on the admission side is that a lot of law schools have started accepting applicants with GRE scores in place of LSAT scores.
Hmm.
The LSAT's been the only game in town for like all of history since 1948.
Yeah,
And it has a strong demonstrated correlation with first year law school grades. And you want that because you don't want people going to law school who are then going to flunk out after fall semester 1L
yeah,
or not be able to pass the bar because you're making a big investment in your education. You know, people walk away with hundreds of thousands in debt between the tuition and the opportunity cost and the living expenses and all that. So you really want to know that you're going to be able to do it. And the GRE, in my opinion, has not demonstrated the same level of correlation with 1L grades. But law schools want those applicants because there's been a recent decline in the number of people looking to go to law school. But law schools still have all their overhead. They still have all their administrators with six-figure salaries. And so they've got to meet their expenses. And the way to do that is to have more people coming in the door all the time.
yeah. I think the LSAT really is a good test. I mean, I remember people are frustrated and they get angry because this testing is difficult, you get low grades, but it really does gauge you really well if this is the kind of field you should be going in, at least for getting law school grades and stuff like that. And I guess thinking like a lawyer. So how widespread is it? Do a lot of this? I think a lot of the top tier schools has been the switch already, right?
Yeah. So it started with some of the lower tier schools, like University of Arizona was a big one. But then Harvard, a couple of years back, I think it was 2017, Harvard said they were going to take it. And if Harvard says they're going to do something, then everyone else feels comfortable doing it too. So quickly after that, a lot of the T14 follows suit, top 14 law schools followed suit. But I don't want to overstate the situation with the GRE because a lot of schools have started taking it, but they're not necessarily taking that many applicants who have the GRE scores.
Mm-hmm.
The top schools, they're usually using it to maybe attract some people with STEM backgrounds who may not have otherwise been considering law school because the GRE, of course, is more popular, more widely administered, used for a wide variety of degrees. And so if someone took it and maybe is considering law school, then they think about it, they're ready to go. They don't have to suddenly start studying for a whole other test altogether.
Yeah. And so do you help not only with LSAT, but other admission related stuff for law schools?
Yeah, I definitely advise people with the admission stuff. A lot of my free resources talk about different parts of the application. I'm not an admission consultant, though. My focus is on the LSAT, but I'll oftentimes help my students with their personal statements or questions about letters of rec and things of that nature.
Interesting. So what has anything changed in how admissions works since in the last 10, 15 years?
The biggest change I've seen is that the timeline's gotten longer. It used to be that you might want to make the last time you take the LSAT be December and then apply right afterwards. You wouldn't want to apply with a score from February for that cycle because it was starting to feel kind of late, but that's changed. Again, with the declining number of people applying, law schools have lengthened the timeline. So you take the LSAT in January, February, March, they'll still look at that score and still consider you for that cycle. So you could theoretically take it in February or March. There's an exam coming up on March 30th.
Mm-hmm.
You could take it then and then start law school 5 months later.
Awesome. Interesting. So do they still, how is this weighed now? Is the LSAT, how much they weigh that as part of your overall score change, or depends on the school, or how does that work now?
It's still largely the LSAT is the biggest component in the application process. So it's kind of like there's your LSAT score is the biggest thing. Then there's your undergraduate GPA. Then there's all those other so-called soft factors like personal statement, letters of rec, diversity statement, character and fitness, etc. But it's much more about the numbers.
Interesting. So you must keep busy. I mean, even with the declining people who are going to law school, it's a wide field probably. I mean, they have the big test masters and those kind of groups that do it. But I think people are probably still going towards individual attention, especially people, willing to pay for it, that they would prefer to go one-on-one. Is that right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking for the more specialized options because you have your Kaplans and Princeton reviews that do every exam under the sun, but they're also they're not specializing and they're oftentimes repurposing a lot of the same strategies from other exams to the LSAT reading comprehension in particular. And the internet's also changed a lot. Now, like someone like myself can get a pretty wide reach on the internet. As just in Kaplan and me both have to use the internet the same way. So Facebook algorithm treats everything the same. Twitter treats everything in the same. So it's kind of equal the playing field to some extent.
Awesome. Well, it's a very interesting conversation. If someone wanted to contact you or someone's listening or for a family friend, what are the best ways to get a hold of you?
So the best way is a couple things. The LSAT blog, just Google it. Google LSAT blog, Steve Schwartz. You'll find me. You can email me, lsatunplugged@gmail.com. I'm also very active on YouTube and podcasting. So you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/LSAT blog. And you can find the LSAT Unplugged podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and pretty much everywhere else.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on.
Thanks for having me, John.